Walter's Sports Bar has been recognized by many local publications as one of the best sports bars in Washington, D.C., located across the street from Nationals Park and open year-round.
Churio at first, he can run. Parker deals. Swing a high drive, deep right, forget about it. That one is soaring deep into the night into the second deck. 6-1 Brewers. Number 19 for Yelich. 6 hits in a row, and they have all come in to score.
And welcome to Nats Chat. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. Mark Zuckerman is off for this installment of the podcast, but good to have you with us on what is a big weekend for the Nationals. So with them having the number 1 overall pick in the 2025 MLB draft, which gets going on Sunday evening. Coming up later in the show, part 2 of a conversation that the owner and executive producer of this podcast, Tim Shovers, had with Masson Orioles analyst, former Orioles starting pitcher, and LSU legend Ben McDonald. This portion of the conversation is about candidates to be taken by the Nats with that number 1 overall pick in the 2025 MLB draft, other than LSU starting pitcher Cade Anderson. But before the 2025 MLB draft is the Nats playing their final series before the All-Star break, a 3-game series at the Milwaukee Brewers. And that series began with an 8-3 loss at the Brewers on Friday night. You know, the last time that I did a solo installment of the Nats Chat podcast was for the show of what turned out to be the Nats' final win with Davey Martinez as manager, the 11-7 win over the Detroit Tigers at Nationals Park on July 3rd. And as you may recall, I during that show noted some interesting post-game comments from Davey. Quote,
"Thank you to the Washington Nationals for giving me the opportunity to do what I love to do."
That win for Davey was his 500th regular season win as Nats manager. That was a milestone win. Him saying what he said after that game, him thanking the Nats, may have simply been about the milestone. But as I said on that installment of the podcast, him saying that was abnormal and stood out, and at least to me came off as him perhaps lobbying to be retained as Nats manager. And, you know, in hindsight, perhaps Davey had an inkling about what was coming just 3 days later. And of course, what came 3 days later was Nats managing principal owner Mark Lerner on Sunday evening announcing having fired Mike Rizzo as the team's president of baseball operations and general manager, and having fired Davey Martinez as manager. This has been some week if you are a Nats fan. And so here we are now, massive change for the Nats. As I've been saying for weeks, long before the firings happened, the Nats rebuild is not working. The hope is that the rebuild is salvageable. Is this rebuild salvageable? Well, the Nats on Friday night got ripped, and they now are at a new low point in MLB's 2025 regular season. 18 games below 500, 38-56, and the run differential now is at minus 94, second worst run differential in the National League. Put yourself in the shoes of Nats interim general manager Mike DeBartolo. What are you thinking with this rebuild? 38-56 with a minus 94 run differential. It is amazing to me how poorly this Nats season is going. I thought that the Nats had a real chance for a win total in the 80s. Instead, the Nats might be lucky to finish with a win total in the 70s. More bad offense for the Nats on Friday night. They on Friday night scored just 3 runs and total just 6 hits, although 5 of the 6 hits were extra base hits. The 6 hits were a home run, a triple, 3 doubles, and a single. And the Nats worked 4 walks, but the Nats went just 1 for 11 with runners in scoring position. Brewers reliever DL Hall, he served as the Brewers opener. He allowed 1 run in 3 innings. The Brewers then went with starting pitcher Quinn Priester. He allowed 2 runs in 6 innings. The Brewers for years have been big on the opener strategy, and the strategy worked out quite well in this game. Now, the Nats did hit some balls hard. There was an element of bad luck for the Nats offensively in this game. The Nats for the game per StatCast had 10 exit velocities, each of at least 95 miles per hour, but ultimately just 3 runs. 3 offensive bright spots for the Nats were C.J. Abrams, Brady House, and Riley Adams. Abrams, as the Nats starting shortstop and number 1 batter, went 2 for 5 with an RBI triple and a single. Abrams in a Nats 1-run third had an RBI triple to the right center field gap for a 1-0 Nats lead. So a nice bounce-back game for Abrams off his rough game in the 8-1 loss at the St. Louis Cardinals on Thursday night. Brady House, he is the Nats starting third baseman and number 7 batter, went 1 for 4 with an RBI double and continued to look good defensively. I don't know how you're not impressed by what we're seeing defensively from Brady House at third base so far. House in a Nats 1-run 6 had a 2-out first pitch RBI double into left center field to cut the Nats deficit to 7-2. And Riley Adams, he is the Nats starting catcher and number 9 batter, went 2 for 3 with a solo homer, a double, and a walk. Adams in a Nats 1-run 7th had a leadoff homer to left field to cut the Nats deficit to 7-3. Adams has shown some signs of life offensively in recent weeks. Now, he overall is having a really bad season, no doubt, but he would appear to be the Nats' number 1 catcher for now, with Keibert Ruiz back on the 7-day concussion injured list. So this is a prime opportunity for Adams to assert himself. Adams, over his last 8 games, 8 for 31 with a homer, 2 doubles, and 3 walks. But otherwise, just not a ton happening for the Nats offensively in this game. James Wood as the Nats starting left fielder and number 2 batter, 0 for 3 with a walk. Nathaniel Lowe as the Nats starting first baseman and number 4 batter, 0 for 4. Alex Cole as the Nats starting center fielder and number 5 batter, 0 for 3 with a walk. Luis Garcia Jr. as the Nats starting second baseman and number 6 batter, 0 for 3 with a walk. Dalen Lyle as the Nats starting right fielder and number 8 batter, 0 for 4. The Nats starting pitcher in this 8-3 loss at the Brewers on Friday night was Mitchell Parker. He was not good. Parker allowed 7 runs in 4 2/3 innings. He gave up 8 hits, which were a home run, 3 doubles, and 4 singles. He issued 3 walks. He recorded no strikeouts, though he did throw a lot of strikes. This was odd. He over 85 pitches threw 59 strikes versus just 26 balls. So he had a strikes to balls ratio of better than 2-1, and yet he had 0 strikeouts. Parker, in the bottom of the 3rd, allowed 6 runs as he gave up a hit to each of the first 6 Brewers batters in the inning. Parker in this Brewers 6-run 3rd gave up 3 singles, 2 doubles, and a home run. The homer was the last of the 6 hits. Parker gave up a 2-run homer by Christian Yelich to right field for a 6-1 Brewers lead. So Mitchell Parker now for this regular season, 19 starts, ERA of 5.12, whip of 1.42. Do you remember how well Parker was doing earlier this season? Parker, over his first 5 starts this regular season, had an ERA of 1.39. He has struggled since then. Has had a few good starts since then, but overall, his season has not gone well. And what really hurts him is the lack of strikeouts. His strikeouts per 9 innings is just 5.82, really low by today's standards. And his batting average on balls in play allowed, his BABIP allowed, is only 282. So it's not like he is being victimized by the variance of the batted ball. He allows for a lot of balls to be put in play, yes, but he actually has been lucky in not giving up more hits on balls in play, and yet still his ERA is at 5.12. I mean, think about it like this. His strikeouts per 9 innings, 5.82, is nearly the same as his ERA, 5.12. Not good. That is what you call not ideal. The Nats bullpen in this 8-3 loss at the Brewers on Friday night was good. 4 Nats relievers combined to allow 1 run in 3 1/3 innings. Cole Henry in the bottom of the 5th faced 2 batters and got 1 out. He came into the game with runners at the corners and 2 outs. Henry, to the first batter he faced, issued a 2-out hit by pitch of Caleb Durbin to load the bases, but Henry then induced a pop out by Joey Ortiz for the 3rd out. Brad Lord tossed a perfect bottom of the 6th with 2 swinging strikeouts. Luis Garcia allowed 1 run in 1 inning. He in the bottom of the 7th gave up a 1-out first pitch solo homer by Andrew Vaughn on a bomb to left field for an 8-3 Brewers lead. The homer went a projected 413 feet per StatCast, and Jose A. Ferrer tossed a scoreless bottom of the 8th. First appearance for Ferrer since Sunday. You know, we have not been seeing much of Jose A. Ferrer lately. We have been seeing a ton of, say, Cole Henry, but we have not been seeing much of Ferrer. Game 2 for the Nats at the Brewers, Saturday afternoon at 4:10. Shinosuke Ogasawara will be the Nats starting pitcher.
Make Walters your spot, not only before and after every game at Nationals Park, but Walters also is right by Audi Field And DC United, the Washington Spirit, and the DC Defenders are all in season.
Here's Andrew Vaughn. Here's the pitch. Swing a long drive, left field and deep. Wood going back. He can only watch. This one is sailing on out of here into the second deck. 8-3 Milwaukee. That one a moonshot, almost scraped the roof.
We have received a lot of feedback regarding the firings of Mike Rizzo and Davey Martinez. We appreciate all of you who write in very much. Always enjoy reading what you guys have to say. Email from Caleb Pierce. Writes Caleb, "Hi, Alan Mark. Just wanted to say how much my daughter and I enjoy your podcast. We listen every morning on our way to daycare. Even though we never want to celebrate someone losing his or her job, we're really encouraged at the changes that are happening with the Nats, especially in the GM department. We'll see how things go the rest of the season, but DeBartolo seems perfect for what this struggling club needs right now. Thanks, and keep up the great work, Caleb and Violet." Well, thank you very much for that, Caleb. And thank you, Violet. I agree that Mike DeBartolo may just be what the Nats need. As I have said on this podcast, I really liked what DeBartolo had to say in a session with reporters this past Tuesday afternoon. And this quote sticks with me. Quote, "Simply stepping up our game is not enough. We need real change. I'm excited to bring a fresh approach, a fresh voice to this role, and integrate more data, more technology, more innovation into our decision making across the organization at all levels, and hopefully improve the performance of our players as well." End quote. That right there was music to my ears. That right there was precisely the kind of thing that I wanted to hear from Mike DeBartolo. Email from David in Delaware. Writes David, "I would be stunned if DeBartolo is not named the permanent GM down the line. Manager is a little more tricky. I think the Nats will go for a first-year guy. The guy I would like to see, even though I can't see this happening for the short term, is Buck Showalter. He would surround himself with good coaches and might be able to fix a lot of the fundamental gaffes this team makes." Thank you for the email, David. So Buck Showalter is known to be really controlling. So if the Nats go with a head of baseball operations who is big on analytics, and I think that the Nats absolutely should go with a head of baseball ops who is big on analytics, Showalter may not be all in on doing as the front office wants him to do, but Buck Showalter gets results. There's no doubt about that. He had every managerial stop has had success. Hasn't necessarily lasted long at each of these managerial stops, but he had every managerial stop has had success. Email from Danny. Writes Danny, "First and foremost, thanks for the podcast. As a Nats fan living in Pittsburgh, your program helps me feel as actively engaged with the team as I did when I lived in Virginia. Your conversations are smart, insightful, and appropriately critical in a world of hot takes. While remaining sensitive to Mark's position, I am incredibly curious about the potential impact of the end of the Masson dispute with regard to the ownership and front office decisions being made. Are the learners more invested now that the Masson dispute is over? Finally, moving forward with jersey patch and stadium sponsorship certainly suggests that the learners are interested in increasing revenue, and a fair television deal would be incredibly appealing as a potential GM too. If I take an academic perspective, the Masson dispute is one of the biggest undertold stories in baseball over the past 20 years. How much of the budget handicap imposed on Rizzo was due to the fact that the Nats never got their fair TV revenue? It's such a unique situation that has to have played an important role in where the organization is today. I don't know that I'll ever get satisfactory answers to these questions, but I do think they're appropriate to ask. Sincerely, with natitude, Danny. Well, thank you very much for the email, Danny. So I would say this about the Masson dispute. Whatever the financial ramifications for the Lerner ownership group have been due to the Masson dispute, the Masson dispute did not prevent the Nats from having a high payroll for years. The Nats per Cots baseball contracts ranked in the top 10 in MLB in year-end 40-man payroll in each of 8 consecutive seasons, 2013 through 2020. So, while the Masson dispute was ridiculous and was unfair to the Nats, ultimately, the team did have a substantial player payroll for years, and that is something for which the Lerner family deserves credit. The Lerner ownership group has been peculiar in some of the decision-making when it comes to spending, particularly on infrastructure. But when it comes to spending on players, the Lerner ownership group, for a good chunk of time, spent very generously on players. And you have to give the ownership credit in that regard. I mean, like I said, top 10 in MLB in year-end 40-man payroll in each of 8 consecutive seasons, 2013 through 2020. So the Masson dispute hurt the Nats. There's no doubt about that. But it did not prevent the Nats from having a high player payroll for years. As far as the Nats' local television situation moving forward, so the Masson dispute, of course, is over. We, this past March 3rd, got the glorious announcement from the Nats and O's that the Masson dispute was over, and included in the announcement was that the Nats after this season are, quote, free to explore alternatives for their television rights for the 2026 season and beyond, end quote. The problem is this. What exactly are those alternatives? In this cord-cutting environment in which regional sports networks, RSNs, are struggling, and in an overall media landscape in which traditional media / legacy media is plummeting, I'm not convinced that the grass is greener for the Nats via leaving Masson at this point. Maybe, hopefully, I'd love to see the Nats be in a better local television situation, okay? But I'm not convinced that, financially speaking, there is an obvious better option for the Nats right now. I don't know how you could be convinced of anything these days when it comes to local sports television, because there just is so much uncertainty. You know, the irony of the Masson dispute is that the Nats' best option with the dispute finally over might actually be sticking with Masson, especially with Masson finally offering a direct-to-consumer streaming option with no blackouts and with no cable or satellite subscription required in Masson Plus. Keep the feedback coming. You can find us on X at Nats_chat. You can find us on Blue Sky at natschatpodcast. You can email us natschatpodcast@gmail.com, including if you have a shout out that you would like for us to deliver. And we do have a shout out to deliver. This from Jacob, wishing a very happy 21st birthday to my brother Elliot Zed. The little buddy is now legal. Enjoy your first drink today at Fenway on me. Love you, bro. Thank you for that, Jacob. And happy birthday, Elliot. Hope you enjoyed Fenway Park. And speaking of enjoying a drink or two or more, I did want to make mention of this. Did you see what Mike Rizzo is doing? We, on Friday morning, 5 days after the firing of Mike Rizzo, got the following announcement from the Rizzo Family Foundation in a post on X. Quote, as a way to say thank you to the fans for 19 amazing years with the Washington Nationals, grab a round on Riz Monday, July 14th, before the Home Run Derby at Penn Quarter Sports Tavern or Walter's Sports Bar. First round of beer is on us, 5 to 7 p.m. Cheers to an incredible ride. End quote. How about that? So, first of all, Walters, the official home base of the Nats Chat podcast, labeled right there by Mike Rizzo, by the Rizzo Family Foundation, as a go-to spot if you're a Nats fan. Great to see that. But how about Mike Rizzo buying Nats fans beers this Monday evening in preparation for the Home Run Derby, which, of course, will include James Wood. This as a thank you for Rizzo's time with the Nats. What a gesture by Mike Rizzo. What a classy thing to do by Mike Rizzo. Whatever complaints we have had about Mike Rizzo, right? And we on this podcast have talked about the bad drafting and bad player development. But Mike Rizzo, the person, nobody has ever questioned that. Every indication is that Mike Rizzo is a good dude, good person. And this gesture to me is just tremendous. I was so happy to see this, and my respect for Mike Rizzo as a person, as a man, went up even more with this announcement on Friday morning. Can't say enough good things about Mike Rizzo and the Rizzo Family Foundation doing what they are doing this Monday evening. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. I'm Al Galdi. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat podcast, and we leave you now with part 2 of a conversation that our own Tim Shovers had with Masson Orioles analyst Ben McDonald. This portion of the conversation is about candidates to be taken by the Nats with the number 1 overall pick in the 2025 MLB draft, other than LSU starting pitcher Cade Anderson. Enjoy.
And there he goes. Swing and a miss, doesn't matter. Double-digit strikeouts. And we're only through 4.
About 10 strikeouts in the first 4 innings. That usually plays pretty well. 1-0-2 to all 4 guys in the 4th inning. That's 4 scoreless for Doyle. He struck out 10.
Being in Birdland, I'm sure you've heard Ethan Holliday get brought up, Jackson's younger brother. What are you hearing about him in the rumor mill? What do you know about Ethan Holliday?
Well, what we know about this year's draft is there's not a clear-cut number 1, okay? And so it almost feels like, I've heard 4 or 5 names mentioned potentially being the number 1 pick, but the Nationals, as you know, obviously have the first pick, and it almost feels like it's one of those deals to me that whoever will take a haircut in the draft, in other words, take a little bit less than slot value, the first one that raised their hand and says, I'll be the number 1 pick, and I think the value is around $12 million this year, whatever it is, whoever comes in there and says, hey, I'll take 10, I think that could be your number 1 pick. And what we do know is that Holliday is going to be represented, and Anderson is both represented by Scott Boras, who represented me many, many moons ago. Typically, the Boras guys don't take haircuts in the draft. That's just typical. But I know the Nationals have a lot of history with Scott Boras. I know the Nationals are not afraid to draft pitchers at the top of the draft either. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was Ethan Holliday either. I wouldn't. I think, looking at him, he's built more like his dad than what Jackson is. There's big time pop there from the way he hits. And so he's a dude, man. I'm telling you, I've got to see him work out a few times, been around him a little bit, and he's a big kid. Like he's built more like dad than what Jackson is, And so I don't look if you're trying to choose between Anderson and Holliday, I don't think you're going wrong with either one of those. Both those guys to me are going to be big time, big league players.
What does your eye test tell you for Holliday? Shortstop?
That's a good question. The video I've seen, I think maybe he gets a shot there. But for me, when I watch him, I'm looking at a power hitting third baseman. I think he projects out better maybe at third base than he does at shortstop. I think he'll get that opportunity, but he's so young, man. You don't know how these guys are going to grow, how much bigger they're going to get, how much weight they're going to put on. That was always a question for me with Gunnar Henderson, right? At 6'4", would he outgrow the position and get up to 230 pounds one day, and maybe you got to stick him over at third? Gunnar right now is showing over with the Orioles that he's, still very young, obviously, as young as he is. But right now, he's able to stick at the shortstop position. He's not outgrown it. And so there's some big shortstops out there in the game. Holliday would be one of those guys if he did get to the shortstop position. But I know this. He's either going to play short or third base, and he'll do well there.
Last question for you. Appreciate your time. You were in Omaha. You saw Ava Arquette in person, shortstop for Oregon State, highly touted. What did you think of him?
Liked him too. He's a first rounder all day long. The draft is tricky, as you know, and we see these kids at the collegiate level, and you wonder, does it translate to the pro game? When you get the wood bat in their hand, does it translate to the pro game? Those are all questions that we can't answer right now. But I watched him play. I had him one game at the College World Series. I love his footwork. I like his arm over at the shortstop position as well, And then we saw the kid from UCLA who's projected to be the number 1 pick in next year's draft. Chalowski, I think is his name at UCLA. Big old guy that plays shortstop. He's projected to be the number 1 pick in next year's draft. And so there were some big-time performers at the College World Series. We saw some real guys play the game of baseball. It was fun to watch. The talent at the collegiate level continues to get better. I think NIL has something to do with that. A lot of these kids are wanting that college experience because, again, we know, you go back and look at this year's rosters. When the big league season started, 54% of major league roster players came from the collegiate game. So I think kids are starting to say, hey, man, I like the college experience. If I can go to a big-time program and develop and play type A competition, kind of like what Cade Anderson has done, I think it furthers you in your time in the minor leagues. Is going to be a lot less if you go to college and then bounce into pro ball.
Well, Ben, thank you so much. For our listeners, if you didn't watch the College World Series this year, you missed out. Next June, make sure you tune into Ben. Does a great job. The coverage is top-notch, and you get to see future big leaguers. Ben, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
I appreciate the kind words for sure. Always great to catch up with you.